Excellency High Commissioner of India, Excellency Dr. Rajan and Mrs. Rajan, former ministers, former governor, deputy governors, and board members, distinguished chairman of the MBA, chairman and CEOs of banks, chairman and CEOs of other corporates, chairman and CEOs of regulatory bodies and oversight institutions, gentlemen and ladies of the press, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me wish you a very warm welcome to tonight's dinner. We are honored by your presence here this evening. And we are lucky to have in our midst a very distinguished governor from overseas, to whom I must give a very special welcome. He will be formally introduced to you later when he is to address us tonight. But let me now just say this. He is not merely governor of the Reserve Bank of India, but one of the world's most acclaimed new generation of economists. In the past, we have been privileged to have here distinguished Nobel Prize-winning economists such as James Mead and Joseph Stiglitz. Some may recall we had the formidable Jeffrey Sachs, whom I introduced at the time as a big shot in his field. If Jeffrey Sachs is a big shot, our guest tonight, Dr. Rajan, is a veritable long-range exocet missile. A Joshua whose early trumpet call, warning of the risks of a credit boom, first attracted derision from the economic establishment before the great financial crisis hit us and proved how right he was. From a prophet crying in the wilderness to one of today's foremost economic thinkers, yours, Dr. Rajan, has been a remarkable career indeed. You are most welcome to this small island state. The annual dinner in honor of economic operators has become a linchpin in the bank's calendar of events, as it gives me the occasion to share with you my vision for a better Mauritius from my vantage point as governor. In the heat of election fever, which we are now living through, I thought it timely to reflect on the legacy of the economic operators for the future of our country. They say a country gets the leaders it deserves. Happily for us, we have had some of the best in both business and politics. Only time will tell whether this holds true for all those newly running for office this time around. I am here reminded of that quip from Bernard Shaw, assessing a young man's employment prospects. He said, he knows nothing and thinks he knows everything. That points clearly to a political career. But in the small island state, we are economically and environmentally vulnerable. And that demands continual, decisive leadership. Perhaps not as decisive as that of the Duke of Wellington, famed, as you will remember, for his brilliant military record against Napoleon. It is less well known that he was Prime Minister of Britain not once, but twice. 13 years after defeating Napoleon, the bold Iron Duke, as he was called, conducted his first cabinet meeting. He confided to a friend afterwards, "What an extraordinary affair. I gave them their orders, and damn it, they wanted to stay and discuss them." After our meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee here, and your boardroom battles, many of you here tonight, I guess we all know the feeling of meeting our Waterloo. Tonight, I want to ask how we are facing up to the future. Do we have the resilience to survive as a nation, or indeed as a civilization? Resilience is the capacity for bouncing back after shocks. Despite our small size and our isolation, resilience of anti-fragility has become our badge of honor. But is that enough? We survived the 1960s prediction of inevitable catastrophe of a future economics Nobel Prize winner. We exorcised the coast of Maldives, just as we have seen off the plague of malaria. We have developed remarkable defenses against cyclones. We have fought off dengue fever and chikungunya. Above all, we are in pretty good shape after the global financial and economic crisis of recent years. Moreover, we continually garner new accolades from the likes of the World Economic Forum, the Heritage Foundation, and the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. So, well done, Mauritius. Well done, our policy makers. Well done, economic operators. And you, our bankers, well done. And we sit in critically. But what of our future? What price a more inclusive society that leaves no one behind? Can we bounce back from the worst economic and environmental ravages to come? How far can we promote a job-rich and inclusive growth on the lines of what the IMF boss, Christine Lagarde, has been recently calling for? So, let me try my hand at prophecy. Did I hear a sharp intake of breath? I know that on these occasions, sometimes it is said that I have a streak of arrogance in me, though I trust not as much as the notorious King of Castile, Alfonso the Wise by name. Surveying the state of the world in 1252, he observed, "Had I been present at the creation, I would have given some useful hints for the better ordering of the universe." Let me polish up my crystal ball and look forward 2 decades hence to 2035. What do I see 20 years down the line? I see 3 major intertwined strands ahead. First, there will be an inestimable and massive transformation of society. Second, this will be driven by revolutionary, disruptive, and transformational technologies, which will lead to greater availability and a rapidly declining cost of communication, transport, healthcare, education, and food. Third, I see a complete makeover of banking, business, industry, and social life. In short, the next 2 decades to 2035, I see a substantial transformation of the world as we know it. Think on it. How many of you here tonight, and how much of what you run, will survive 20 years? Not all, I guess. What legacy will be left behind? Greater prosperity, or the decline and fall of the wannabe tiger of the Indian Ocean? Global warming and sea level rise, that's nothing. For I see the driving forces of cheaper, faster, and more reliable transport and communication running roughshod over our present amiable tranquility unless we act now. The prospects I see before us are bankless banking, cash light and fewer staff, weightless companies, few buildings, fewer staff, industry not capital or labor intensive, but knowledge intensive, pilotless drone airlines, shipping, buses, trains, cars, all computer controlled. Universities without students as teaching moves online. Malls, which you have seen mushrooming everywhere. Malls will reinvent themselves. More a gathering place for socializing than shopping. Shops become showrooms and warehouses with internet sales and drop-off delivery. New businesses become small, agile, short lifespan, not the butterflies, but the impalas with many predators. Nation-states fading away into integrated regions. This might be the rosy scenario for some. Yet, there are very ominous clouds on the horizon. Let's look also at the possible worst-case scenario. For without concerted action, the consequences for many of our citizens are bleak. Massive unemployment and underemployment, rising inequality, the super rich richer, the poor poorer, gated luxury estates side by side with sprawling slums, global unrest, strikes, increasing crime, illiberal technology, triumphant, decline and fall of civilized life as we know it, and extremist terrorists, barbarians, massing at the gates of luxury to topple the fat cats. Let me hasten to add that this dystopian nightmare is not yet an inescapable reality. For by preemptive action, we can temper the worst excesses. But tonight, let me focus on the core issue of rising inequality to stimulate debate and action. I see inequality as a time bomb ticking away across the world, and indeed here in Mauritius. Growing inequality, I see by 2035, developing into a fault line that we ignore at our peril. Recent Oxfam research findings show that globally, 85 of the richest individuals control as much wealth as the world's poorest 3.5 billion people. Thomas Piketty, in his massive tome, Capital in the 21st Century, which is the 2014 Financial Times and McKinsey Business Book of the Year, has a lot to say about poverty. He adds to the large body of evidence on the rising concentration of income and wealth. Piketty argues that generally wealth grows faster than economic growth. And slower economic growth has increased the weight of wealth in society, leading to higher inequality, which poses risks to economic and social stability. We are living in an increasingly divided world, where many Africans risk their lives daily on shaky boats to escape poverty and conflict, while the super rich chase their next billion to improve their ranking in the Forbes list. Even here in Mauritius, some of our top income earners are paid over 200 times the wage of their office cleaners, and 10 times more than the surgeons in our hospitals. Is that the society we want to perpetuate? Is that a society that is just and sustainable? It is a time bomb ticking away. We are a country trying hard to escape from the middle income trap. But we must focus on the risks inherent in jobless growth, persistent high unemployment, and the widening divide between the haves and the have-nots. Over the past decade, the Gini coefficient points to growing inequality. Households in relative poverty increased from just below 8% to 9.4% in 2012. The distribution of income by quintile paints an even starker picture. The richest 20% of Mauritian households enjoyed an 8% increase in their incomes. The poorest 20% suffered a steep decline of twice as much. Is this our idea of a just society? There is much talk of faster economic growth, paving the way to a higher income status, with a policy preference for monetary stimulus to push growth from its current 3.5% to the 5% of pre-crisis years. But there is much less talk about the quality of that growth. This is extremely dangerous. Myopia about our heritage of skewed asset ownership can turn out to be very costly. A headlong rush for growth can be the royal road to social instability and economic breakdown. What we need above all is growth that provides for all: a decent house, quality education, health, transport, food, and respite from debt. Growth is good. Sustainable growth is better. Sustainable and inclusive growth is best of all. Is this nirvana attainable, you may ask? Here in Mauritius, with our population of only 1.3 million and a policy environment never trailing too far behind best practice, we could have a stab at it. This is not a going too far, not for us, who have developed the habit of punching above our weight. But we must work for it and encourage our policymakers to press ahead with the reform agenda. And while they are fixing our policy environment, we must accelerate our drive for a new phase in corporate social responsibility. CSR is fine, and sometimes even fun. But isn't there a better way for corporates to carry and demonstrate their social responsibility? Let us draw some inspiration from James Wolfenson, former World Bank president. 10 years ago, addressing a function of the World Bank with the World Savings Bank Institute, he remarked, "I want to salute the savings banks and encourage them to continue in their theme of double bottom line, to think not just for profit, but to think also of social responsibility." Double bottom line reporting seeks to extend the conventional bottom line, measuring financial profit or loss, with which we are all familiar, by adding a second bottom line to measure their performance in terms of positive social impact. Indeed, to address our sustainability concerns, encapsulated so well in the Maurice et Durable concept, we can go one better and embrace triple bottom line reporting. This will include the valuation and protection of the rich resources of our beautiful natural environment. Laying down more concrete, like guzzling fuel in traffic jams, increases our GDP. Protecting our social environment and our physical environment is better captured by the double and triple bottom lines in quality accounting. Rising inequality worldwide, and here in Mauritius, raises key issues on the role of monetary policy and its redistributive impact. We need bold policies to reverse inequality. So what are we to do? We certainly can't ignore these threats which are already upon us. How best to wage war against poverty and inequality? Here, I am reminded of US President Eisenhower, who was a much decorated US general and who knew a thing or two about war. He declared, "In preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning indispensable." I agree, Ike, that we must have a battle plan. We must put our minds to the task of planning for both resilience and inclusive and sustainable growth, and audit the results on the triple bottom line. For this, I believe we need to reconstitute a strong and well-resourced strategic planning capacity at the heart of the policy-making establishment. For me, there are 7 essentials for action. First, become a learning country, not just adapting to change, but anticipating it and thriving on it. Second, harness knowledge transfer, learning and investment, whether foreign or direct, to increase our productive potential. Third, ensure life cycle education for all as we adapt and readapt to a rapidly changing environment. Fourth, transform our universities into centers for R&D and innovation, and put undergraduate teaching online. Fifth, attract and retain our best talents, offering international rates for the job for them and for our migrant diaspora. Sixth, build a strong, targeted social safety net with business incubators, incentives for startups, and skills development. And seventh, shift the employer of last resort function from the public to the private sector, and harness technology for your business and for national welfare. Christine Lagarde at the IMF has called recently for more targeted subsidies and welfare schemes, with the savings put into education, training, and improved infrastructure. But there is one thing that we in Mauritius definitely must not do, and that is to increase the fiscal burden. We must redouble efforts to extract much greater efficiency from all our public expenditure, whether recurrent or capital. Let me say a word about the role of the central bank. At this stage of our development of our country, the best contribution that the central bank can make is to keep inflation low, stable, and predictable as the foundation for a fairer and more equal society. Inflation is the worst form of taxation. It is regressive, an enemy of the poor. Price stability promotes inclusive as well as sustainable growth. Exchange rate stability operates through the import channel to support price stability. Regular calls here for what is euphemistically called a competitive rupee are an invitation to depreciate the currency. It is difficult to see how an unequal society like ours, with an import-dependent economy, can depreciate its way to development. The central bank is rightly concerned with the distributional effects of monetary policy. Borrowers have been subsidized for too long by savers. Savers have responded to persistent low interest rates by halving the savings effort over the last 2 decades. In parallel, low interest rates have boosted the wealth of asset holders and increased inequality. As the US ends quantitative easing and normalizes interest rates, we must prepare for greater currency volatility and changing market sentiment towards emerging and developing economies. The central bank will have its hands full in combating these pressures to ensure continued stability. We must always bear in mind that price stability and exchange rate stability engender social stability. And that is the public good, ladies and gentlemen, that we all should be working for. Without foresight and concerted action now, we will leave a poor legacy for our children, condemning them to live in a socially and environmentally degraded and deeply divided society. Change we must. For as the political philosopher Edmund Burke declared, a state without the means of change is without the means of its conservation. We all should be in the business of change. Change for the better is the order of the day. Now, let me turn to somewhat lighter things. As we prepare to tuck into the delightful fare awaiting us, may I invite your attention to the first law of dietetics, as proclaimed by the best-selling science fiction writer and biochemist Isaac Asimov. But first, do take a large pinch of salt. Asimov's law states, if it tastes good, it's bad for you. Salt or no salt, I declare this first law of dietetics suspended for tonight. Dinner will be served, and I prophesy it will be good for you and taste good too. So may I now ask you all, ladies and gentlemen, to be upstanding, to join me in a toast for the future of the country and its capacity for resilience and continued, sustained, inclusive development. The toast is Mauritius, our country's sustainable and inclusive future. Thank you very much for your attention.